After working for 3 years, my wife ran away with someone. After returning home in the midst of despair, the billionaire father comes knocking on his door. Ex-wife. Husband, let's get back together. I really regret divorcing you. Chapter 1. Betrayal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chairman. Your long-lost son has finally been found. The old butler excitedly rushed to the villa living room. Yi Haishan stood up from the sofa in shock and said, Really? What's his name? Where is he now? The old butler happily said, His name is Lu Zhou, and he is the group employee who donated blood to you earlier. Hurry up. Prepare a special plane immediately. I need to go see him immediately. Yinshi City. Lu Zhou sat in the taxi, looking happily at the gold necklace in his hand. For the past 3 years, he has been working as a sailor on a ship, earning a monthly salary of over 10,000 yuan. He gave all his money to his wife, except for leaving a few hundred yuan for himself. He had not returned from vacation yet, but the chairman of their group suddenly fell critically ill and urgently needed a blood transfusion a few days ago. The group offered 5 million as a reward to search for people with Rh special blood types. Lu Zhou happened to become the lucky one. He not only received 5 million, but also a month's vacation. So he took 5 million yuan with him and wanted to go back and give his wife a big surprise. Half an hour later, Lu Zhou arrived at his doorstep. He was about to knock on the door when he suddenly saw a pair of black leather shoes placed outside. Lu Zhou's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and these leather shoes looked like they were for men. But my father-in-law doesn't usually wear leather shoes. These shoes, are they lighter? Lighter. Suddenly, a beautiful voice came from inside. Lu Zhou was stunned on the spot, and the jewelry box in his hand fell to the ground with a loud bang. Next came the voice of a man accelerating his pace. Finally, with a sound of release, the two finally came to an end. Zhao Wenhao caressed Zhou Qiqi's face and asked with a mischievous smile, How are you? Do you still want it? Zhou Qiqi bit her red lips and blushed. Whether you're good or bad, they can't stand it anymore. Do you still want to come? Zhao Wenhao hugged her and asked, What are you afraid of? Are you still worried that your useless husband won't come back? How could it be, and even if he comes back, I'm not afraid. He's already 26 years old and can't even make a minimum annual income of 1 million, he's just trash. Zhao Wenhao admired Zhou Qiqi's graceful figure and smiled, I really want your husband to see your tempting appearance now. Zhou Qiqi's face turned even redder upon hearing these words. Bang! The door was suddenly kicked open by someone. Zhou Qiqi quickly covered her body. She looked at Lu Zhou in horror and said, You. How did you come back? Lu Zhou stared at her with a face full of anger, his eyes unable to stop the anger. Oh, the trash is back. Zhao Wenhao looked at him with a sarcastic expression on his face. Lu Zhou clenched his fists and stared at him with gritted teeth, his gaze as if it could kill someone. Zhao Wenhao hugged Zhou Qiqi with a faint smile and said, We were just talking about you. I didn't expect you to come back so soon. I'll fuck your mother. Lu Zhou suddenly roared and rushed up. He rushed to the sofa and knocked Zhao Wenhao down. He swung his fist at his head and it was a frenzy. Zhao Wenhao was beaten and could only curl up on the ground. Lu Zhou, stop fighting. Stop it. Zhou Qiqi kept shouting from behind. But at this moment, Lu Zhou couldn't listen to anyone at all. He just wanted to kill this dog named Zhao. Bang! Suddenly, a crushing sound sounded. Lu Zhou felt like his head was hit hard by something he didn't know. He touched his head and his hands were covered in blood. He turned his head and Zhou Qiqi was so scared that she quickly threw away the broken vase in her hand. You! Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly fell to the ground. Zhou Qiqi hurriedly helped Zhao Wenhao up and said, How are you, brother Hao? Zhao Wenhao touched his face and couldn't help but hiss in pain. He looked at the land boat on the ground and angrily kicked it up. Not enough kicks, he kicked several more in a row. Zhou Qiqi pulled him and said, "All right, brother Hao, you're bleeding. Let me take you to the hospital first." She helped Zhao Wenhao leave together. But they didn't notice that the wound on Lu Zhou's head was still bleeding incessantly as time passed by. I watched as Lu Zhou's vitality was about to be completely cut off. Suddenly, the wound on his head miraculously began to heal. On the other hand, Zhou Qiqi has already taken Zhao Wenhao to the hospital for examination. He wasn't seriously injured, but for safety reasons, Zhou Qiqi still had him hospitalized for 2 days of observation. In the ward, Zhou Qiqi sat by the bed holding Zhao Wenhao's hand. She looked at him with a heart-wrenching expression on her face and said, "I'm sorry, brother Hao. It was all my fault that caused you to be beaten up like this." Zhao Wenhao smiled and said, "It's okay, it's just a minor injury, and I can't blame you either. If I have to blame you, it's also the kid surnamed Lu. Yes. It's all his fault." Zhou Qiqi became more and more angry as she spoke. "Who made him come back without saying a word? I didn't even know to say it in advance and even beat you up like this, brother Hao. Let's see how I'll settle accounts with him later." "Don't worry, I won't let him go so easily." Zhao Wenhao's eyes flashed with a sinister gaze. "How go, since he has returned, I can just divorce him, and then we can be together openly and honestly." Zhou Qiqi smiled as she looked at him. Zhao Wenhao's heart furrowed. He just looked at this woman's good figure and played with her. How could he really marry her? Just rely on her. Not worthy at all. Just as he was thinking about how to refuse her, a sudden sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the ward. "Qiqi, where did you get hurt?" A middle-aged couple hurriedly walked in. When Zhou Qiqi saw her parents coming, she stood up and said, "Dad, Mom, I'm fine." Zhou Dehai and Li Sume carefully examined their daughter and found that she was not injured, which made them feel relieved. Zhou Qiqi turned to look at Zhao Wenhao and said, "Fortunately, Mr. Zhao just arrived at home to talk to me about work, otherwise I would definitely be beaten to death by him." Zhou Dehai looked at Zhao Wenhao on the hospital bed and saw that he had many bandages wrapped around his head and hands. Did Mr. Zhao's injuries all over his body be hit by that kid Lu Zhou? Zhou Qiqi nodded and said, "Yes, I don't know why he suddenly came back. He said he would hit me in no time." Li Sume gritted her teeth and cursed, "Lu Zhou is such a useless waste. Not to mention earning only 1 or 2,000 yuan a month. He dares to hit my daughter. I have nothing to do with him." Zhou Qiqi looked aggrieved and said, "Mom, let's just let him have no future. He even wants to rape me at home. I don't want to have sex with such a scumbag anymore. Divorce. Whatever you say today, you're going to divorce him. He won't even get a penny of your family's money." Zhou Dehai looked at his daughter and said, "Where is that kid surnamed Lu now? Look, I won't kill him today. I should still be at home." Li Sume took her daughter's hand and walked out. "Let's go find him to settle the accounts." At this time, the runway at Yunxi Airport has been cleared, and everyone is eagerly awaiting it. The special plane of the chairman of Yi Group, the largest domestic conglomerate, is about to arrive. Chapter 2. Billionaire Dad Visits Your Door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, the heads of the 4 top aristocratic families in Yunxi, led by the Hong family, as well as the 8 first-class aristocratic families, have all arrived. Not long after, a special plane appeared in everyone's sight. Everyone watched as the special plane slowly descended. They watched excitedly and nervously as the special plane came to a steady stop and the cabin door slowly opened. At this moment, Zhao Yunsen was extremely nervous in his heart. This was the first time he had seen the chairman of the top domestic conglomerate with his own eyes. Although their Zhao family is considered a first-class family in Yunxi City, compared to top financial conglomerates like the Yi family, they are so weak that they are not even as strong as a single ant. Cloud-level figures like Chairman Yi of the Zhao family can completely disappear from Yinxi City with just a flick of their fingers. However, this is also an opportunity for Zhao Yunsen. He was well aware that with his identity as a mere member of the Yinxi family and the Zhao family, it was impossible for him to climb onto giants like the Yi family. However, if he can climb up to the Yi family's subsidiary company in Yinxi City, it will be a matter of time before his Zhao family can join the top family in Yinxi. Even, it is possible to replace the Hong family and become the top aristocratic family in Yinxi. At that time, he didn't need his son to marry other top aristocratic ladies. Speaking of which, I don't know where that guy Wen Hao went today. Zhao Yunsen had some doubts in his heart. At this moment, a figure walked out of the cabin. Everyone was about to bow and clasp their fists when they suddenly realized that the person coming was an old man wearing a tang suit. The old butler looked at the crowd and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman is feeling unwell due to the tiring journey and needs to rest. It is not convenient to see guests at the moment. Please go back first." The head of the Hong family, Guan Xin, said, "Do you know if the chairman's health is important? I will immediately invite the top doctor from Yunxi to treat the chairman." "No problem, just rest and recuperate, everyone, please." Everyone had to clench their fists and leave when they saw the situation. Later, Yi Haishan arrived downstairs from the Lu Zhou family. He looked around and couldn't help but sigh, "I didn't expect Xiao Zhou to live in such an old and dilapidated place. I really owe him too much over the years." The old butler lowered his head and said, "Chairman, the group branch happens to have a villa industry in Yinxi City, among which is the best half-mountain villa in Yinxi City." Yi Haishan turned his head to look at him and couldn't help but smile, saying, "You old man, you have clearly touched my careful thoughts." The old butler smiled lightly and replied, "Sharing the worries of the master is my responsibility." Yi Haishan looked at him and said, "Don't forget what we said before. Don't tell him the real relationship between me and him yet." "Understood," the old butler respectfully replied. A few minutes later, the two arrived at the doorstep of Lu Zhou's house. The old butler knocked on the door, and inside came the voice of Lu Zhou. "Who?" The old butler replied, "Mr. Lu, the chairman has come to see you." "Chairman?" Lu Zhou is confused, "Which chairman?" He opened the door skeptically. At the next moment, he was completely stunned. He couldn't believe it, but he didn't expect the chairman of the group to actually come. "Dong! Chairman, why are you here?" He stared blankly at Yi Haishan. The latter looked at the bloody gauze on Lu Zhou's head and couldn't help but frown slightly. "Are you injured?" "It's okay, I accidentally bumped myself," Lu Zhou said with a smile. Yi Haishan came into the room and saw the vase fragments in the trash can over there. He looked at the old butler beside him, who had already understood his meaning. He withdrew, leaving only Lu Zhou and Yi Haishan in the room. Yi Haishan looked around and was somewhat puzzled. "Don't you still have a wife? Why don't you see her?" Upon hearing these words, a hint of anger flashed in Lu Zhou's eyes. Although he quickly concealed it, he still couldn't escape Yi Haishan's eyes. His heart sank slightly. It seemed that the injury on his head was mostly related to his wife. "She has something to do and has gone out." "The chairman, please have a drink of water," said Lu Zhou, pouring a glass of water for Yi Haishan. Yi Haishan did not continue to inquire about this matter. He looked at Lu Zhou and said, "Last time you saved me, I haven't had a chance to thank you properly." Lu Zhou smiled and said, "The chairman is polite. The company has already given me a lot of rewards. That was given by the company. Now I have two personal options for you. Firstly, I will give you a luxury house and a luxury car. Secondly, there are no luxury houses or cars, but you can become the person in charge of my Yi Group's Yinxi branch. How do you choose between the two?" Upon hearing this, Lu Zhou fell into a moment of silence. After a moment, he said, "I'll choose the second one." Upon hearing these words, Yi Haishan smiled and said, "Very well, it's truly my Yi Haishan's." Lu Zhou looked at him with some confusion. Cough cough. Yi Haishan coughed twice and said, "You are truly the person that Yi Haishan is interested in. From today on, you will be the person in charge of Yi Group's Yinshi branch. Someone will contact you later. If you have any questions, you can ask her." "Mr. Yi, I don't quite understand. Just because I saved you once, are you treating me so well?" Lu Zhou looked at him puzzled. Yi Haishan smiled and said, "Can't we?" Lu Zhou. "Please rest assured, Chairman. I will not disappoint the trust of the group in me." Yi Haishan stood up and patted his shoulder, saying, "Young man, I'll keep an eye on you. Let's work hard. I'm leaving." "Chairman, are you leaving now?" "You don't want to sit for a while longer," Lu Zhou pleaded. Yi Haishan declined his invitation and went downstairs with the old butler. Lu Zhou escorted them to the staircase and said, "Chairman, please take your time." Yi Haishan and the old butler arrived downstairs, frowning and asking, "Did you find it?" The old butler replied, "Someone has been sent to investigate, and it is currently preliminarily determined that there may be a connection with the Zhao family. Let it disappear." "Yes," the old butler lowered his head and said back. At this moment, several people walked towards them. At the moment when Zhou Qiqi and Yi Haishan passed by, their shoulders accidentally bumped into each other. Zhou Qiqi turned her head and said displeasedly, "Didn't you have eyes?" The old butler's eyes turned cold and he immediately approached to teach her a lesson. Yi Haishan stopped him. Zhou Qiqi originally wanted to scold Yi Haishan, but Zhou Haihai quickly grabbed her and said, "All right, hurry up and leave, don't let that stinky kid run away." After they left, the butler asked, "Chairman, why didn't you just let me teach her a lesson?" Yi Haishan looked at Zhou Qiqi's departing figure and said, "She is Xiaozhou's wife." The butler was stunned on the spot. Yi Haishan thought of the fragments of the vase in the trash can, and his eyes sank slightly. "Follow up," he said. The butler followed him back. A few minutes later, Zhou Qiqi arrived at the door of Lu Zhou with her parents. Bang, bang, bang. She slammed the door hard and said, "You, surnamed Lu, get out of here." Chapter 3. Shameless Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Zhou frowned slightly when he heard her voice. Seeing that the door hadn't opened, Li Sume immediately cursed, "You bastard surnamed Lu, don't think hiding inside and not making a sound will make you okay. Open the door for me. Did you hear me?" Zhou Dehai pulled his daughter over and said, "Why bother with him? I'll kick the door open." He lifted his leg and kicked towards the door. "I'm about to kick the door open." Suddenly, the door opened. Zhou Dehai stumbled and fell to the ground. "Dad!" Zhou Qiqi quickly helped her father up. She glared angrily at the landing boat and said, "You bastard, did you do it on purpose?" Lu Zhou glanced at them and said, "Is there anything wrong?" Li Sume came up to him and angrily pointed at him, "You bastard. It's in vain that my daughter didn't mind you marrying you back then. You only gave her over 10,000 yuan per month, and now you're still a human. Domestic violence." Lu Zhou frowned slightly. Even though she was the one who was beaten, did she become a victim? "What? Are you still trying to deny it? My daughter has already told us everything. You worthless useless person, you have no ability to only vent your anger on my daughter. What kind of man are you?" Lu Zhou looked at Zhou Qiqi with a cold face, and it goes without saying that she must have been reversing black and white behind her back. "Why don't you ask your daughter what good deed she did?" Lu Zhou looked at the two of them. "Dad, when you look at his gaze, it's so scary. At first glance, you want to hit me, I'm so scared." Zhou Qiqi quickly pretended to be scared and hid behind her father. Zhou Dehai protected her and said, "Don't be afraid of your daughter. Today, my dad will let him know what will happen if he dares to touch my daughter, Zhou Dehai. He grabbed onto Lu Zhou's collar and glared at him with a fierce expression, saying, "You, surnamed Lu, dare to hit my daughter. I hit your own mother today and I don't even know her." He tugged hard, trying to pull Lu Zhou to the ground. However, Lu Zhou stood still in place. Zhou Dehai was stunned for a moment. What was the situation? He tried to pull several more times, but Lu Zhou remained motionless. Zhou Dehai saw that he couldn't pull him, so he swung his fist and threw it at his face. "I'll beat you to death, you bastard." Lu Zhouyan watched as his fist hit him, but for some reason, the originally fast and swift fist became as slow as a snail in his eyes. He casually moved aside. Bang! Zhou Dehai punched him in the air and threw a dog to eat shit on the spot. "Oh, my old waist." Zhou Dehai painfully supported his old waist. "Are you okay, husband?" Li Sume quickly stepped forward and helped her husband up. Zhou Qiqi gritted her teeth and pointed angrily at Lu Zhou, saying, "Lu Zhou, are you still human? How dare you take action against my father? You are truly despicable. Which of your eyes saw me touch him?" Lu Zhou frowned. "You're still trying to argue. It's clearly you who caused my dad to fall. Are you still not human?" Li Sume helped Zhou Dehai up and waited for Lu Zhou with an angry expression on her face. "How could he say he's also your elder? How dare you treat him like this? Do you have any conscience?" "Lu Zhou. What do you mean? He wants to hit me, but I can't hide yet." Li Sume angrily said, "As your elder, why did he hit you? You deserve it. You should have suffered it. Who told you to hide? Who allowed you to hide?" Lu Zhou frowned and remained silent as he watched her. Zhou Dehai supported his old waist and gritted his teeth as he looked at Lu Zhou. "You, surnamed Lu, intentionally caused me to fall. Are you genuinely trying to kill me, this old bone? I'll say it again, it was you who fell on your own, not me." "Lu Zhou." Zhou Qiqi angrily pointed at him and said, "I don't care how you bully me in your daily life. Now that you dare to touch my parents, do you really know what it means to have a sense of seniority? Do you still have my parents in your eyes? When did they see me in their eyes?" Lu Zhou asked as he looked at Zhou Qiqi. Zhou Qiqi's face turned pale with anger and she said, "Divorce. I can't stand a useless person like you who is both unproductive and only takes offense at women anymore. Whatever you say today, you have to leave. That's right. Trash like you don't deserve my daughter at all. You deserve no one to see you off. Divorce. Divorce my daughter immediately." Li Sume looked at Lu Zhou angrily. Lu Zhou looked at Zhou Qiqi and said, "Is that your purpose?" Zhou Qiqi looked at him with a sarcastic expression and said, "Do you think garbage like you, who can only earn 1 or 2,000 yuan a month, still deserves me? Even a dog earns more than you. Have you ever made money for your family on your own in the past 3 years?" Lu Zhou asked. Zhou Qiqi seemed to have been stabbed in a painful spot and immediately retorted, "Women are born to be pampered and nurtured. Why do you want me to make money? It's only natural for you to make money to support me and give me flowers. That's right. My daughter married you for the sake of happiness. Why did you let my daughter go out to work and earn money? What kind of thing are you?" Li Sume glared at Lu Zhou with her hips crossed. Zhou Qiqi looked at Lu Zhou with disgust on her face and said, "I was really blind before I chose to marry a useless person like you. Look at other men in their 20s and 60s. Who doesn't start earning 1,000,000 yuan a year? You only gave me 10 or 20,000 yuan a month. How could you still want me to make money? How could you have the face to say such malicious things? So this is the reason why you cheated on that person surnamed Zhao." Zhou Qiqi's face instantly changed color. She kept blocking Lu Zhou's mouth, just not wanting him to say that, but she didn't expect him to say it all at once. Fuck you. Stop talking nonsense there. Don't falsely accuse me and Mr. Zhao. Zhou Qiqi retorted with a red face. Is it a false accusation? You know better than anyone else in your own heart. Lu Zhou's face was cold. Zhou Qiqi looked at him with a disgusted expression on her face and said, Lu Zhou, you really make me feel nauseous and nauseous. I have never seen a man as disgusting as you before. Not only have I abused my own woman, but I have also falsely accused my wife of having an affair with another man. Are you still a man? You are just a beast. You are not as good as a pig or a dog. Li Sumei glared angrily at Lu Zhou and said, My surname is Lu. Not only did you hit my daughter, but you also want to tarnish her reputation now. What are you so worried about? You should ask your daughter about this. Lu Zhou looked coldly at Zhou Qiqi. Mom, you see he still wants to slander me. Zhou Qiqi said angrily, hugging her mother's hand. Li Sumei pointed at Lu Zhou and said, Let me tell you, don't even say that my daughter hasn't cheated at all. Even if she's really with Mr. Zhao, then you deserve it. It's your fault. Who made you live such a miserable life? You, such a useless person, deserve to be hooded. Chapter 4. Divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the stairwell, the old butler asked, Chairman, do you need me to help the young master teach them a lesson? Yi Haishan shook his head and said, If he can't even handle this matter, how can I trust him to hand over the Yi family in the future? The old butler stopped asking any more questions upon hearing these words. Divorce. Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau now. Zhou Qiqi didn't want to stay with Lu Zhou for a moment anymore. Lu Zhou looked at Zhou Qiqi and said, I hope you don't regret it. Zhou Qiqi sneered and mocked, I will regret it. Even if I marry a dog in the future, it's better than being with you. Lu Zhou stopped talking nonsense to her and took his documents to the Civil Affairs Bureau with them. 1 hour later, at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Zhou Qiqi looked at the divorce certificate in her hand and smiled happily. Zhou Dehai looked around and said, It doesn't seem easy to take a taxi in this place either. Why don't we go ahead and take a taxi? Upon hearing these words, Li Sumei looked at Lu Zhou on the side and sneered, It's not that he's the one who's useless. He even has to take a taxi to get divorced. People like him might as well die. Zhou Qiqi looked at her mother and said, Mom, it's just about arranging a car. I'll just call Mr. Zhao. Li Sumei was a bit surprised and said, Really? Mr. Zhao is willing to arrange a car for us. Zhou Qiqi's face blushed slightly and she said, Actually. I never told you. Mr. Zhao has always had a good impression of me, but I was married before and it's not easy to get too close to him. Upon hearing these words, Lu Zhou glanced at her. Li Sumei was overjoyed and said, That's really great. If you had known this, you should have divorced this useless person earlier. She looked at Lu Zhou on the side as she spoke, pouting and mocking, Ren Zhao always has some kind of identity, much better than him, this poor and useless person. Zhou Qiqi took out her phone and said, I'll call Mr. Zhao now. Lu Zhou glanced at them and ignored them. He turned his head and walked towards the nearby bank. He received a 5 million check reward from the company before, but now he can withdraw it and deposit it in his own card, otherwise it would be inconvenient to keep the check with him. Li Sumei watched as he went to the bank, feeling a bit puzzled. What did that kid do at the bank? Zhou Dehai shook his head, he was also unclear. Zhou Qiqi had already finished the phone call by this time. She smiled and said, Mom, Mr. Zhao said the car will arrive later. Let's wait for a while. Li Sumei gestured at the bank entrance and said, What is that kid doing at the bank? Zhou Qiqi glanced and said, I don't know, maybe I'll withdraw the money. He wouldn't have secretly hidden his private money, would he? Li Sumei asked. Zhou Qiqi smiled and said, Mom, don't worry. He basically gives me the money every month, and he can only leave a few hundred yuan for himself at most. How could he still have private money? Li Sumei pondered for a moment and said, coincidentally, let's also go to the bank and temporarily transfer the money from your card to my card, so that he won't play pranks and come to you for money again. Okay, Zhou Qiqi didn't refuse either. The three of them arrived at the bank and happened to see Lu Zhou wanting to withdraw money. Excuse me, I would like to withdraw money. Where can I withdraw the number? Lu Zhou looked at a staff member and asked. Tao Hongyu gestured to the ATM over there and said, aren't you going there to pick it up yourself? Lu Zhou glanced and shook his head, saying, I can't take it from above. Tao Hongyu was about to speak when Li Sumei walked over with her daughter and husband. She sneered and said, who do you think you are? You can't withdraw a few hundred yuan from the ATM, and you still want to go to the counter. Why is your face so big? How do you know how much I want to take? Lu Zhou looked at her. Zhou Qiqi hugged her hands and sneered, I don't know how much money you have left in your pocket every month. Just your pants pocket is cleaner than your face. Tao Hongyu said coldly to Lu Zhou, Sir, if you want to process a withdrawal service of less than 20,000 yuan, please handle it at the ATM and do not occupy our counter service. Thank you for your cooperation. Li Sumei and her family looked at Lu Zhou with a smug and mocking expression on their faces. Seeing that he was exhausted, they felt extremely happy in their hearts. Can this be used at the ATM? Lu Zhou directly took out a check with a golden seal. Tao Hongyu felt a bit puzzled when she saw this check. Show me. She took the check and carefully looked at it. Li Sumei gestured to Zhou Qiqi and asked her to check the amount on the check. Zhou Qiqi leaned over to take a look, only seeing a 5 followed by a long string of zeros. Is this 500 or 5,000? She had never seen a check before and couldn't understand it. Li Sumei walked up to her and carefully looked at her, 1, 10, 100, 1,000. 5 million. She almost startled her chin. The others in the hall were attracted by her screams of surprise. This. How could this be? Zhou Qiqi couldn't believe it. She looked at Lu Zhou with a shocked expression on her face. He had already paid himself his monthly salary, so why would he still have a huge sum of 5 million now? Zhou Dehai and Li Sumei were completely dumbfounded. They originally thought that Lu Zhou was just a worthless waste, but they didn't expect to have so much money. Where did you get so much money? Zhou Qiqi asked as she looked at Lu Zhouji. Does it have anything to do with you? Zhou Qiqi was angry and unwilling. According to the previous regulations, all your money should be transferred to me, and this money should also be mine. Lu Zhou glanced at her, too lazy to pay attention to her. Li Sumei was so angry that she pointed at Lu Zhou and cursed, what a good person with the surname Lu. How dare you hide so much private money? This money must be given to my daughter no matter what you say today. You're right. You've been delaying my daughter for so many years, and giving her this 5 million yuan as compensation is not enough, it must be given to her. Zhou Dehai also demanded that Lu Zhou give the money to his daughter. Wait a moment. Tao Hongyu suddenly spoke. Everyone turned their heads to look at her. Tao Hongyu looked coldly at Lu Zhou and said, your check is fake. Everyone present was stunned. Zhou Qiqi first regained her senses and looked at Lu Zhou sarcastically, so you're pretending to be holding a fake check here, you're really hypocritical. Li Sumei immediately changed her face as she looked at Lu Zhou with a sneer and mockery. I was still thinking, how could a useless person like him possibly have so much money? He turned out to be a dead scammer. Zhou Dehai looked at Tao Hongyu and said, I remember using fake checks was considered a crime, right? Shouldn't your bank arrest him? Tao Hongyu looked at Lu Zhou with a cold expression and said, someone. 2 security guards quickly approached and Tao Hongyu glared at Lu Zhou, saying, this person is suspected of forging and using fake checks. I will immediately arrest him and take him to the judicial authorities. Yes. The two security guards were about to arrest Lu Zhou. Zhou Qiqi couldn't help but smile as she saw that he was about to be arrested. Chapter 5. Apologize to Mr. Lu as soon as possible. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who told you this check is fake? Lu Zhou asked. Tao Hongyu looked at him and said, I've never seen the gold seal on this check before, and the format of this check is also different from a regular check. Are you saying it's not fake? Let your manager come and take a look. Lu Zhou didn't want to waste too much time with her. This is a check issued by the company to oneself, naturally it cannot be fake. Tao Hongyu looked at Lu Zhou and asked, What? Are you questioning my business ability? That's right. Tao Hongyu's face turned pale. She didn't expect this person to use fake checks to deceive her into not saying anything, and even dared to question her. Zhou Qiqi sneered and said, When did Lu Zhou's face become so thick? People have already exposed your tricks, and you are still directing and acting here. Is that interesting? I think he's probably out of his mind. He thought his little trick could deceive professionals, Li Sumei sneered. Tao Hongyu looked coldly at Lu Zhou and said, My ability is not up to you, an outsider, to question. Take him to the judicial authorities. See if he still talks tough when the time comes. With her command, two security guards caught Lu Zhou and wanted to take him away. What are you doing? Suddenly, a shout of cessation sounded. A few people turned their heads and saw a middle-aged man in a suit walking out. Tao Hongyu saw him come out and pointed at Lu Zhou, saying, Manager Lin, this person dares to fake checks and come to our bank to try to cash them. I am just about to have someone take him to the judicial authorities. Fake check. Manager Lin frowned slightly. Tao Hongyu handed him the check and said, This is the check. Manager Lin took the check and his face immediately changed. He widened his eyes and looked at Lu Zhou, This. Is this check yours? It's mine. Is there any problem? Manager Lin frowned and looked at the two security guards, Don't let them go yet. The two quickly released their hands. Manager Lin invited, Sir, please come with me. Lu Zhou walked into the exclusive VIP room amidst the astonished gazes of everyone. Tao Hongyu is confused. What is the situation? Isn't that check fake? Why didn't Manager Lin arrest him and instead invite him to the exclusive VIP lounge? Zhou Qiqi, Li Sumei, and Zhou Dehai are all confused. Hello, may I ask if the check just now was really fake? Zhou Qiqi was a bit worried and quickly asked again. Tao Hongyu was dissatisfied and said, Of course it's fake. Do you also doubt my business ability? Li Sumei quickly smiled and said, No, we naturally believe in your abilities, but... She looked at the VIP exclusive lounge over there and said, Isn't that kid supposed to be arrested? Why did you invite him over? Tao Hongyu snorted coldly and said, What do you know? Manager Lin wants to stabilize him first so that we can give him a chance to report to the police. Otherwise, what if he runs away on the road? She turned her head to look at the two security guards next to her and said, What are you two still doing in a daze? If you don't, go to the police now. The two of them finally regained their senses and hurriedly went to report to the police. Zhou Qiqi looked at her mother, her gaze clearly asking, Is that check from Lu Zhou true or false? Li Sumei gestured for a glance at the VIP exclusive lounge, which was very obvious. When he came out, he would know. So the three of them waited in the hall for Lu Zhou to come out. At this moment, in the VIP exclusive lounge, Manager Lin is apologizing to Lu Zhou, I'm sorry, Mr. Lu. It's all due to our lack of training and poor management, which caused our subordinates to collide with you. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. Can you help me transfer the money from the check to this card first? Manager Lin smiled and replied, Okay, please wait a moment. About a few minutes later, Manager Lin smiled and returned Lu Zhou's bank card to him, saying, "Mr. Lu, all of your 5 million yuan has been transferred to your card. You can check it." Lu Zhou opened his phone and checked it. After confirming receipt, he was ready to get up and leave. By the way, he suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Manager Lin and said, "If they ask you if my check is fake when they go out later, how do you plan to answer?" Manager Lin looked at him and tried to ask, "I don't know, how do Mr. Lu want me to answer?" Lu Zhou's mouth curved upwards, revealing a playful smile. A few minutes later, Lu Zhou and Manager Lin walked out of the VIP exclusive lounge together. Li Sume saw him coming out and quickly signaled to her daughter. "Manager Lin, is there anything else I can help with?" Tao Hongyu saw them coming out and quickly approached, smiling and asking. Manager Lin looked at Lu Zhou and coughed dryly, "Hey, what's that?" "Mr. Lu's check is indeed genuine. How could this be possible?" Zhou Qiqi stood up in surprise. "If that check is true, wouldn't Lu Zhou really have 5 million? Manager Lin, are you sure you're not mistaken? How could he really have 5 million? Li Sume quickly approached and asked. Tao Hongyu was completely stunned. She didn't expect to really take her eyes off it. It was a real check, but she had never seen such a check before. The check is true, but the amount on it is not true. What does that mean? Zhou Qiqi frowned in confusion. Manager Lin looked at Lu Zhou and said, "The actual amount on Mr. Lu's check is 5,000, not 5 million. He, I just said how could a useless person like him possibly have a huge sum of 5 million yuan?" Li Sume sneered. Zhou Qiqi also sneered and said, "With so many zeros written, I thought you were really rich, but ended up being a poor loser." Manager Lin looked at them and shook his head in his heart. These people are really shallow-eyed. He frowned and looked at Tao Hongyu. "How did you treat your clients just now? Is that how we usually train you? Why don't you apologize to Mr. Lu?" Tao Hongyu lowered her head and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lu. It was my bad attitude just now, and I apologize to you." As a bank staff member, Tao Hongyu naturally knows that the amount cannot be wrong. It is estimated that the so called 5,000 yuan was said by this major client who was unwilling to expose his financial resources and had discussed it with his manager. As Lu Zhou was about to speak, Zhou Qiqi beside him sarcastically said, "Even if he gets a real check, what's wrong? It's just a poor comparison of 5,000 yuan, and he deserves to accept an apology." Manager Lin looked at her and said, "Madam, I kindly remind you to stay on the front line of life and see you again in the future." It's as if someone still wants to say goodbye to him, this useless person. "Dad, Mom, let's go." She finished speaking and left the bank with the two of them. Just arrived outside, a black Maybach slowly stopped on the roadside. Li Sume was surprised when she saw the car and said, "Is this the car arranged by Mr. Zhao for us? It seems that it will cost at least 1 million, right? My daughter is also very kind to you." Zhou Qiqi glanced at Lu Zhou who walked up from behind and said, "Of course, that's not like this poor loser who can't even afford a car." At this moment, a tall and beautiful woman wearing an OL uniform came down from the driver's seat. She is fair-skinned, beautiful with long legs, and her cool and charming demeanor completely overwhelms Zhou Qiqi. She approached Lu Zhou and respectfully opened the car door, saying, "Mr. Lu, please." Chapter 6. Is the car you called, right? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Zhou boarded the carriage and sailed away. Zhou Qiqi and the three of them stood still in shock. A cold wind blew by, and the three of them woke up as if from a dream. Zhou Qiqi looked at the direction in which the car was heading away and sneered, "I don't know where to call such a luxury car on a car-hailing app. It's really a face full of fat." "You're right, a poor car without even 5 digits in a card is so funny to lick its face and call it such a good car. It's really shameful." Li Sumei sneered along. About 10 minutes later, a small car with a ride-hailing sign posted on it arrived in front of them. The three of them glanced at it but didn't pay much attention. The driver put down the car window and asked, "Did you call the car?" "Look at me, look at you," all three of them are confused. "Did you call me or not?" The driver became impatient. Zhou Qiqi frowned and said, "If you don't open your dog's eyes and take a look, do we look like people who can break ride-hailing services?" The driver was so angry that he retorted on the spot, "What is a broken ride-hailing service? Isn't the phone number 9877 yours? It's really inexplicable." Li Sumei looked at her daughter in confusion and said, "This seems to be your phone number, isn't it?" Zhou Qiqi looked confused and said, "But I haven't even called for an online ride-hailing service." Suddenly, her phone rang. The driver held his phone and said, "Even though it's your phone, you still say it's not." Li Sumei suddenly reacted and said, "Shouldn't it be? Is this the car that Mr. Zhao called for us?" Zhou Qiqi suddenly became speechless. Li Sumei and Zhou Dehai don't know what to say. "What are you still writing? Are you sitting or not?" the driver urged impatiently. Zhou Qiqi was very unhappy and said, "What's the rush for? I'm not sitting anymore." "What kind of thing?" The driver stepped on the gas and left. Li Sumei looked awkwardly at her daughter and said, "Qiqi, why don't you call Mr. Zhao again? Maybe he made a mistake just now." This. Zhou Qiqi didn't know what to do for a moment. Just as she was struggling, Zhao Wenhao's phone suddenly came over. She answered the phone with a smile and asked, "What's wrong, Mr. Zhao? What's wrong with you? Why did I cancel the car when I saw it on my end?" Upon hearing these words, Zhou Qiqi knew that the ride-hailing service was really his call. If the driver needs anything, we'll let him go first. If it's okay, Mr. Zhao, we happen to have a car coming here, so there's no need to trouble you, Zhou Qiqi apologized. Okay. Zhao Wenhao hung up impatiently. Zhou Qiqi looked at her mother with some helplessness. Li Sumei sighed and turned her head to look at the empty road, saying, "Where's a car here?" Zhou Dehai took out his phone and said, "Forget it, I'll call a car." The three of them waited here for about 7 or 8 minutes, and the car they called finally arrived. They opened the car door and were about to get in when they saw that it was the same driver as before, so they didn't know what to say. The driver also looked at them with a black line on his face. "Forget about getting in the car, there probably won't be any other cars here," Zhou Dehai reluctantly advised. The three of them had to reluctantly get in the car and leave here. On the other side, Lu Zhou was sitting in the back row of the luxury car, leisurely drinking coffee. He took a sip and put down his coffee. "Mr. Yan, according to what you just said, the Zhao family really wants to cooperate with us now." Yan Ryu nodded and said, "Yes, the Zhao family once sent someone to contact the people under our company, but we didn't pay attention to them. Since they want to cooperate with us so much, let's satisfy them." Yan Ryu glanced in surprise at the rearview mirror and said, "Are you sure?" Because she already had a rough idea of the grudges between the Zhao family and Lu Zhou. However, how to cooperate is up to us. The final say. Lu Zhou's eyes flashed a cold color. Understood. Yan Ryu had already guessed roughly what he wanted to do next. "By the way," she continued, "our company is going to hold a commercial cooperation banquet in Yinshi City in the next few days, and we will select a partner. Do you think so? Since that's the case, let's use this cocktail party to let everyone know that the Zhao family will be our company's exclusive partner in the future in Yinshi City, understand?" Yan Ryu nodded and said, "Okay, I understand." She originally thought that Lu Zhou was just an ordinary person, but she didn't expect to underestimate him. He made everyone in Yinshi City aware that the Zhao family would be the exclusive partner of the company in the future, which is equivalent to grilling the Zhao family on a fire and making it a target of criticism. Especially those top families who are already stronger and have more competitive qualifications than the Zhao family, they will definitely be very dissatisfied and hold a grudge for it. As for the Zhao family, Lu Zhou turned his head to look out the window, and a faint smile flashed over his lips. If you want it to collapse, you must first make it crazy. After arriving at the company, Lu Zhou read a lot of information about the company. After all, if you are about to take over the group's business in Yunxi, you must have some understanding in order to continue developing your business. In the evening, he had almost finished watching and was ready to leave the company. Yan Ryu stood up and wanted to drive him back. You don't need to see me off, I'll just stroll back by myself. This. Yan Ryu felt a bit embarrassed. Lu Zhou gestured to his desk and said, I have annotated some information about the Zhao family. Take a look. Okay, she respectfully bid farewell to Lu Zhou. About 40 minutes later, Lu Zhou rode a small electric donkey to his own downstairs. As soon as I arrived downstairs, I saw a moving company car loading things, and there were many things inside that belonged to my own family. Isn't this Mr. Lu who specializes in luxury cars for pick-up and drop-off? Why did he switch to riding a small electric donkey now? Li Sumei walked out of the corridor and sneered. Lu Zhou looked at her with a slightly heavy gaze. Zhou Qiqi also walked out from inside at this moment, glanced at the little electric donkey under Lu Zhou, and said, I really want face. With that little money, I even rented a luxury car to beat my face. I don't know whose face hurts more. Lu Zhou glanced at the pots and pans in the car, then turned his head to look at Zhou Qiqi and said, You really moved them clean enough. Don't worry, I won't leave you a single hair, Zhou Qiqi said. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something. She smiled and said, By the way, the bed that Mr. Zhao and I used to sleep on is not suitable for now. Since you are idle now, why don't you take some time tomorrow to help me deliver it to the villa group in the middle of the mountain? After all, there is still the smell of me and him on it, and I really can't bear to throw it away. Lu Zhou's eyes darkened slightly, and his face turned cold. Li Sumei sneered, You're such a useless person. Fortunately, Qiqi and you divorced. Otherwise, I might have had to endure a lot of anger following you. Alright, we've almost finished moving, only that bed is left. Zhou Dehai walked out with 2 buckets. Zhou Qiqi looked at Lu Zhou and smiled, If you don't mind tonight, I can reluctantly let you sleep on that bed first. Lu Zhou ignored them and went straight upstairs. A few minutes later, Zhou Qiqi and others loaded their cars and prepared to leave. The car had just started when a huge black shadow suddenly fell from the sky. Bang! A large bed fell directly in front of them a few meters away. Chapter 7. Good play coming soon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The ground was smashed open, and the big bed scattered all over the ground. Everyone in the car was scared out of their wits. Zhou Qiqi's face turned pale with fear. How did he drop it? Li Sumei couldn't believe it. Such a large bed requires at least 2 or 3 people from a moving company to move. He actually threw it down alone. Don't worry, hurry up and leave. That guy is just a lunatic. Zhou Dehai was a bit scared, afraid that Lu Zhou would come down later and do something extreme to them. The driver hurriedly started the car and left this place of trouble. Later, Zhou Qiqi arrived at Zhao Wenhao's ward. How, I have some good news to tell you, she said happily. Zhao Wenhao happened to want to warm up with her at this moment and held her in his arms. His hands wandered irregularly around her and asked with a smile, What good news? Let me hear it. I'm divorced, Zhou Qiqi couldn't help but feel happy. Zhao Wenhao's smile froze on the spot. What's wrong with you, brother Hao? Zhou Qiqi was a bit puzzled. Why doesn't he look very happy? Zhao Wenhao looked at her and said, Are you really leaving? That's right. Zhou Qiqi looked at him happily. The smile on Zhao Wenhao's face gradually disappeared, and his expression became somewhat unsightly. Zhou Qiqi hugged Zhao Wenhao and leaned against his chest, looking aggrieved as she said, "Brother Hao, I have nothing left for you anymore. That ruthless bastard Lu Zhou didn't give me a day. He kicked me out tonight, and I don't even have a place to live now." Zhao Wenhao remained silent. He thought this woman was just talking, but he didn't expect to actually divorce that guy. "You can find a place to stay first. If it's not possible, you can stay in a hotel first." Zhou Qiqi looked up at him and said, "Brother Hao, I want to stay at your house. Do you think it's possible to? Are you joking?" Zhao Wenhao pushed her away. Zhou Qiqi was stunned. She thought she would move out of Lu Zhou's house, but when Zhao Wenhao heard about it, he would definitely let her live in his house. Unexpectedly, she was directly refused. "Hauga, haven't we already? What's already going on? You can find a place to live by yourself. Don't even think about moving into my house. Don't say I won't agree, let alone my dad." Zhao Wenhao gave her no hope at all. Zhou Qiqi lowered her head and looked aggrieved, "But after I divorced him, he divided all his property and didn't leave me a penny. I'm penniless now. Where do you want me to go as a girl to find a house?" Zhao Wenhao frowned and looked at her, picked up his phone and transferred 10,000 yuan to her. "This 10,000 yuan is enough for you to temporarily rent a small house. In the future, you can save on expenses and find a job to support yourself as soon as possible." "Are you asking me to find a job?" Zhou Qiqi looked at him incredulously, unable to find a job even after following Lu Zhou for so long. Now he actually wants to find a job to support himself. Zhao Wenhao glanced at her and said, "What? Do you still want me to keep you?" Zhou Qiqi looked at him with grievances and said, "But before, Brother Hao, you clearly said you wanted to be good to me for a lifetime, and even said that working with these hands would waste these beautiful and moving hands." "I just talk, you'll take it seriously," Zhao Wenhao sneered. Zhou Qiqi watched as he remained silent. Just then, Zhao Wenhao's phone rang. He answered the phone, and Zhao Yunsan's voice came from over there. "Wenhao, where are you now? Why haven't we seen you for a whole day?" Zhao Yunsan asked. Zhao Wenhao dare not tell his father the news of his hospitalization, otherwise he will be scolded by his father again. He smiled and said, "Dad, how many friends do I meet outside? What's wrong?" Zhao Yunsan frowned and said, "Don't spend all day with your fox friends and dog friends. When you have time, pay more attention to and care about the company's affairs." "What's wrong with the company?" Zhao Yunsan said, "The company may soon be collaborating with Yi Group." The Yi Group. The first wealthy family in China. Zhao Wenhao couldn't believe it. That's the top power in China. How could the Zhao family, Hida, actually cooperate with the Yi Group? It's not a collaboration with Yi Group, mainly with Yi Group's branch in Yinxi City. Zhao Wenhao was curious and said, "Are you referring to the commercial cocktail party in 3 days? I heard that the Yi Group branch is going to select a new partner at that cocktail party." "Yes, if there's nothing unexpected, it should be our Zhao family," Zhao Yunsan said with a hint of pride. "Didn't this start yet? How did you know?" Zhao Yunsan smiled and said, "Did you forget? We sent a lot of good things to Mr. Li of the Yi Group branch before, and today we finally have something in return." "Is the news reliable?" Zhao Wenhao was still somewhat uncertain. After all, that is the branch of Yi Group in Yinxi. It can be said that in Yinxi City, it truly covers the sky with one hand. With just one sentence, it can determine the life and death of any top aristocratic family in Yinxi City. Not to mention, their Zhao family is not even considered a top-tier aristocratic family now. It has been confirmed that Mr. Yan, the person in charge of the Yi Group branch, and I have already had a conversation. We will sign an exclusive cooperation agreement tomorrow. Exclusive cooperation. Zhao Wenhao had some doubts. But he didn't think much. Since you have already agreed with Mr. Yan, then I think there should be no problem. Don't play too late today, Come with me tomorrow morning to sign a contract with Mr. Yen. Got it. Zhao Wenhao said and hung up the phone. He looked at Zhou Qiqi, who still looked down with a dejected expression. Zhao Wenhao took her hand and smiled, "All right, don't be unhappy anymore. I have some good news for you, and I guarantee you will be very happy after listening. Has your father agreed to let me live in your house?" Zhao Wenhao's face turned black and he said, "You've been overthinking. My dad just told me that the branch of Yi Group in Yunxi is about to cooperate with our Zhao family." Really? Zhou Qiqi was a bit skeptical. After all, she had also heard of the Yi Group. Not to mention the Zhao family, even those top aristocratic families in Yunxi City wouldn't dare to show any disrespect to the Yi Group's branch in Yunxi even if they were given 10 courage. Zhao Wenhao proudly said, "Wait and see. In no time, our Zhao family will completely replace the Hong family and become the true first-generation family in Yunxi City." Zhou Qiqi also said happily, "I'll let that person surnamed Lu know then. I didn't choose the wrong person. He doesn't deserve me at all." At this moment, Lu Zhou was standing by his own window. He quietly watched the night sky in the distance, and a good play was about to take place. Chapter 8. Sorry, I couldn't hold back for a moment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, Zhao Yunsen and his son Zhao Wenhao arrived at the headquarters of the Yi branch as scheduled. "Two of you, this is the contract. If there are no issues, you can sign it on it." Qin Xiaoxiao handed the contract to the two people. Yan Ryu sat quietly on the side, watching the two of them. This is the first time Zhao Yunsen has met a woman with such a powerful aura. Even as the head of a first-class family in Yunxi, he feels very uncomfortable in front of this woman. He picked up the contract and said with a smile, "Mr. Qin is joking. No one can ask for this contract, so I naturally don't need to read it anymore. I'll sign it now." He picked up his pen and signed his name on it. Zhao Wenhao originally wanted his father to take a look before signing, but he didn't expect him to act so quickly. However, this Yi branch is still a dominant player, and I don't think there will be any overly aggressive contracts. Qin Xiaoxiao took the contract and looked at the two of them. "Since that's the case, then please ask Mr. Zhao to complete the agreement in the contract within the agreed time." "Promise." Zhao Yunsen and his son were confused. Qin Xiaoyu said, "According to the contract, once the Zhao family signs an exclusive cooperation agreement with our company, you must cut off all cooperation with other companies before 10 a.m. the day after tomorrow. Otherwise, you will face 10 times the compensation for breach of contract." This. Zhao Yunsen was stunned. He didn't expect such a clause to be included in the contract. Zhao Wenhao quickly picked up the contract and carefully looked at it. There was indeed a clause on it as he said. He looked at his father with a slightly unpleasant expression and said, "Dad, that's exactly what's written in the contract." Zhao Yunsen awkwardly looked at Qin Xiaoyu and said, "Mr. Qin, is it a bit inappropriate to do this?" Yan Ryu looked at him coldly. "It seems that you want to eat from the bowl and watch from the pot. While working with us, you also want to kick us away at any time, right?" No. I, Mr. Zhao, absolutely dare not have such thoughts." Zhao Yunsen quickly apologized. "You don't want to cut off other collaborations, do you think our company will treat you unfairly?" Zhao Yunsen awkwardly smiled and said, "Mr. Yen has said so, so naturally he won't treat us unfairly, it's just." "Give him the contract," Yan Ryu suddenly said to Li Xiaoxiao. Pop. The contract was thrown in front of them. The latter looks confused. What does this mean? "Since Mr. Zhao is unwilling to cooperate with us, please do as you please." This. Zhao Yunsen looked at the two contracts in front of him, his face very complicated. On one hand, it is the largest collaboration plan in the history of the family company, and on the other hand, it is cutting off all collaborations with other companies. He is really a bit difficult to make a choice. Manager Lee, don't recommend everyone to me in the future, it's a waste of my time. Yen Ryu scolded coldly. The latter quickly apologized, I'm sorry, Mr. Yen. It's because I don't know anyone. Please punish me. Zhao Yunsen is not a fool, Yen Ryu is clearly cursing him. He quickly spoke up and explained, Mr. Yen, you misunderstood. I didn't mean that, Farewell. Yen Ryu suddenly said coldly. Li Xiao approached Zhao Yunsen's father and son with a cold expression and looked at them, please. Zhao Yunsen looked at his son, who also had a puzzled expression on his face, unsure of what to do. Zhao Yunsen gritted his teeth and smiled apologetically at Yen Ryu, saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Yen. It was our momentary mistake just now, and we kindly ask that you, adults, do not remember any wrongdoing and do not argue with us. Yen Ryu looked at him with a cold gaze and said, Mr. Zhao, it is necessary for me to remind you that there is not just your Zhao family who wants to cooperate with our company in Yinqi City. Zhao Yunsen nodded hastily and said, what you reminded me is that there is no problem with this contract. I will immediately go back and follow the instructions in the contract to ensure that all cooperation with other companies is completely cut off. I hope you don't disappoint me, Yen Ryu looked at him coldly. Don't worry, we guarantee to satisfy you. Zhao Yunsen left the company with Zhao Wenhao holding the contract. Yen Ryu stood up and went to the next room. Lu Zhou stood quietly by the window, holding a cup of coffee. Did you leave? He asked with his back to his face. Yen Ryu came to him and lowered her head, saying, if you go back to Mr. Lu, they have already brought the contract with them. I believe that within 2 days, the Zhao family will become a public enemy in the business world of Yinqi. Lu Zhou turned his head to look at her and said with a smile, well done, what reward do you want? Yen Ryu smiled lightly and said, sharing Mr. Lu's worries is my responsibility. Ryu dare not expect rewards. How about giving me a kiss as a reward? Yen Ryu looked at him with a surprised expression on her face. Lu Zhou suddenly approached her and was frightened, causing her to quickly retreat. Suddenly, she accidentally sprained her ankle. She almost fell to the ground in pain. Lu Zhou quickly helped her and said, what's wrong? Yen Ryu looked at her ankle with a painful expression and said, I think I accidentally twisted it. Sorry, I just wanted to joke with you, but I didn't expect to scare you. Yen Ryu quickly shook her head and said, no, it was my own carelessness. Lu Zhou squatted in front of her and looked at her ankle, you sit on the chair first. Yen Ryu sat down on the chair, she didn't know what he really wanted. Suddenly, Lu Zhou lightly grabbed her ankle. Mr. Lu, you. She couldn't believe that Lu Zhou had taken off his high heels. Lu Zhou saw her wearing a semi-transparent, faintly visible black stockings on her feet. Silk stockings wrapped around her fair jade feet, giving her a unique charm. His hand gently rested on her ankle and said, I have learned some massage and bone-setting techniques for treating falls and sprains before. I can help you massage it and it will heal faster. Mr. Lu can't do it, you. Oh. Before she could finish speaking, Mr. Lu had already started rubbing her hands. A tingling sensation immediately spread throughout her body, and she couldn't help but make a voice that was unimaginable. Lu Zhou gave her a strange glance, and Yen Ryu's face immediately blushed. I'm sorry, I couldn't hold back for a while. A few minutes later, Lu Zhou stood up and said, all right, how do you feel now? Yen Ryu tried to move her ankle and was a bit surprised. Huh. It's really much better now. It seems like the pain isn't that much anymore. She stood up and wanted to try taking 2 steps. But I didn't expect to just stand up and almost fall in pain. Lu Zhou quickly helped her, but he didn't expect his hand to touch 2 incredibly soft places. With this help he was stunned on the spot. This feeling in this moment, time seemed to come to a stop. The whole office is so quiet that you can hear a needle drop clearly. Mr. Lu, your hand. Yen Ryu bit her red lips and looked at him with a somewhat shy and angry expression. Lu Zhou regained his senses and quickly helped her onto the sofa, saying, "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Yen Ryu felt a bit angry in her heart. Even though Lu Zhou was her new boss, he couldn't treat herself like this, could he? If it weren't for the fact that he had just rubbed her feet, she would have been angry by now. It's okay, it was my own carelessness. Although she felt resentful, she couldn't easily get angry. Lu Zhou looked at her feet and said, "Although I rubbed it for you just now, it's better not to move around casually for now, otherwise you may sprain again." "It's just a slight sprain, it doesn't matter." She struggled to stand up again. "Hush." She took a cold breath in pain and sat on the sofa again in pain. Lu Zhou looked at her helplessly and said, "Everyone said you can't move around casually, just wait here, I'll be back soon." Yen Ryu was a bit confused when she saw him turn around and go out. Where is he going? About 20 minutes later, Lu Zhou returned. He came to Yen Ryu with a box and squatted down. "Don't wear high heels for now, wear this for now." He opened the box and inside was a pair of cute beige slippers. Yen Ryu looked at the man in front of her incredulously. He had just gone downstairs to buy shoes for herself. "Mr. Lu, this is not appropriate." She regained consciousness and quickly stopped him. Lu Zhou looked at the shoes on her feet and smiled, saying, "I was afraid I might buy them too big. I didn't expect they were just right." "Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Lu." Yen Ryu apologized. Lu Zhou stood up and said, "There's nothing else to worry about. Anyway, there's nothing else to do today. I'll take you back to rest first." "No need, I'll just go back by myself," Yen Ryu quickly refused. Lu Zhou looked at her and smiled, "You don't want to drag your injured foot to drive, do you?" Yen Ryu looked at her feet awkwardly. She couldn't drive like this now. "Alright, let's go, I'll help you down." He reached out and helped Yen Ryu up, and the two of them left the company together. About half an hour later, Lu Zhou drove with Yen Ryu to the villa area in the middle of the mountain. Lu Zhou parked his car and glanced at the villas around him. "This villa area looks quite nice," he said. Yen Ryu smiled and said, "This villa area is one of our company's main industries in Yunxi, and the Zhao family also lives in this villa area." Lu Zhou pointed to a luxurious villa halfway up the mountain and said, "Who lives in that villa? It looks quite good, and you should be able to see the lake view at a glance." "That's your villa?" Lu Zhou looked at him in shock and said, "Mine." "Yes, it was personally arranged by the chairman, and this is also your standard configuration after taking over as the head of the Yinshi branch." Lu Zhou couldn't help but laugh and said, "I didn't expect the chairman to treat me so well. The password for the entrance of that villa is your birthday." Lu Zhou was stunned, his own birthday. He looked at Yen Ryu with some confusion and said, "How do I feel like the chairman is treating me too well?" Yen Ryu smiled and said, "The chairman has always been very good at dealing with his subordinates. Forget it, let me help you in first." He helped Yen Ryu into the villa. At the moment they turned around and entered, Zhao Wenhao and his son happened to drive by. Zhao Wenhao was momentarily stunned when he saw the back of Lu Zhou. "Strange, why does that person's back look so familiar?" he frowned and muttered to himself. Zhao Yunsen asked, "What's wrong?" Zhao Wenhao shook his head and said, "It's nothing, I must have misread. How could he possibly appear in such a luxurious villa area?" Chapter 9. Do you think you are the rich second generation? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Zhou supported Yen Ryu and sat down on the sofa in the living room. Yen Ryu said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Mr. Lu. I was supposed to pour you tea." Lu Zhou looked at her with a faint smile and said, "There's no need to pour tea. Rest well, I'm leaving." As Yen Ryu watched him leave, a faint ripple rose in her heart. Arriving outside, Lu Zhou continued up the road in the villa area. He soon arrived at the villa halfway up the mountain. He looked at the luxurious villa in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. I never dreamed of living in such a luxurious villa before. He entered the password and walked in. The next day, the business world in Yinxi City was completely bombed. All family companies that cooperate with the Zhao family are so angry that they curse loudly. The Zhao family's breach of trust and breach of contract is absolutely despicable. I heard before that the Zhao family may have obtained an exclusive cooperation with the Yi branch, but I didn't expect to kick us away in the blink of an eye. It's truly shameless. We will never cooperate with this untrustworthy company even if we starve to death in the future. For a moment, from several top aristocratic families to some ordinary family companies in Yinxi City, everyone hated the Zhao family to the bone. After all, the Zhao family has been rooted here for many years, and their sudden termination of cooperation will definitely have a significant impact on those companies. At this time, Zhao's company was also very lively, and Zhao Yunsan's phone was almost destroyed. Those companies are calling either to reprimand their breach of trust, to demand liquidated damages, and some are threatening to sue them. Zhao Yunsan looked at the company's continuously shrinking funds and felt a bit worried. Zhao Wenhao smiled and comforted, "Father, you don't have to worry. As long as we officially start cooperating with the Yi branch in the future, it will be a matter of time before our Zhao family wants to become the largest family in Yinxi City. At that time, those who accuse, curse, pursue and sue us will all be trampled on by us one by one." Zhao Yunsan nodded and said, "You're right, they're just a group of short-sighted rodents. Now they have completely broken with us, and they won't get any resources from our Zhao family in the future." At this time, the top aristocratic family. The Hongjia Bieyuan. After listening to a woman beside him, Hong Jiang sighed and said, "Zhao family, it's over." Hong Shiyu had some doubts and said, "Grandpa, I don't quite understand. Isn't the Zhao family going to cooperate with the Yi branch soon? Even if they cut off their cooperation with other aristocratic companies, the Yi family should still give them greater resources, right? How could it be over?" Hong Jiang shook his head and said, "It's not that simple." "Grandpa, do you know anything?" Hong Jiang took out a photo and handed it to her. "If you come across this person in the future, remember to treat them with respect and not to offend them, understand?" Hong Shiyu looked at the man in the photo and said, "He's quite handsome, but I still don't understand. Who is he really?" Hong Jiang looked at the distant sky and said, "Someone we can't afford to offend." Hong Shiyu was somewhat surprised to see her grandfather like this. Even before seeing Mr. Yen from the Yi group, he had never been so afraid. Why is he so afraid of offending this man? She looked at the photo in her hand and became even more curious. On the other hand, Lu Zhou left the villa to go to Yan Ryu's house to see her feet. He was walking on the road when a small car slowly stopped beside him. The car window opened and Zhao Wenhao looked at him with a teasing expression on his face. "Who should I be? Isn't this green hat brother?" Lu Zhou frowned and looked at him. Zhao Wenhao showed a sarcastic smile and said, "Look at what you're wearing and the security guards here are similar. You shouldn't have been abandoned by that woman and become a security guard here, right? You're really as unremarkable as ever." Zhao Wenhao saw that he didn't speak and mocked, "I forgot to tell you. Yesterday she went to the hospital to find me, and we had another conversation at the hospital. Don't worry, doing that kind of thing in the hospital is really exciting." Lu Zhou's face became increasingly ugly. Zhao Wenhao laughed recklessly and said, "That foolish woman still wants to live in my house. I'm just playing with her. She's really stupid like a pig." As he spoke, he looked at Lu Zhou and said, "But you do have a good eye. Her figure is really great, and her bed skills are also very good. She knows the most tricks among the women I have seen, but..." He looked at Lu Zhou with a mocking expression on his face and said, "You probably haven't touched her as many times as I did, have you?" After he finished speaking, he laughed and drove away. Lu Zhou watched him go away, his eyes icy and terrifying. Later, he arrived at Yen Ryu's house. "Mr. Liu, what's wrong with you? Your face doesn't look very good." Yen Ryu frowned slightly. "It's okay, I accidentally got bitten by a crazy dog just now." Yen Ryu was confused and said, "Crazy dog? Are you seriously injured? Do you want me to drive you to the hospital now?" Lu Zhou shook his head. He looked at Yen Ryu's ankle and said, "How are your feet?" Yen Ryu smiled lightly and said, "It's not a big deal anymore. Let's go, I'll treat you to dinner." "How can I ask you to treat me?" "Whatever you want to eat, I'll treat you." The two of them drove away from the villa area together. About 40 minutes later, they arrived at a Western restaurant. Not long after the two of them sat down to order, Yen Ryu's phone rang. She frowned slightly when she saw the phone number. Lu Zhou looked at her and said, "Go pick it up, I'll wait for you." Yen Ryu looked apologetic and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Liu. I'll go handle it first." A few minutes after she left, two people entered the door. "Hauga, I want to eat today." Before Zhou Qiqi could finish speaking, she suddenly froze. She stared blankly at Lu Zhou over there, not expecting to run into him here. Zhao Wenhao was also a bit surprised. Shouldn't he be on duty in the villa area? How could it be here? Suddenly, a proud smile rose from the corner of his mouth. It goes without saying that this kid must be secretly fishing at work. He's done today. Since we've all met, let's go over and say hello by the way. Zhao Wenhao hugged Zhou Qiqi's waist and approached Lu Zhou with a proud expression. Lu Zhou didn't expect to bump into them again, and his brow furrowed. Zhao Wenhao looked at Lu Zhou and sneered, "You're not cowardly. You dare to sneak off duty during work hours." Zhou Qiqi looked at him with a puzzled expression and said, What are you saying? How can I not understand?" Zhao Wenhao looked at Lu Zhou and said, "He's wearing the security uniform of our community. I just ran into him, but when I turned around, he skipped work and sneaked out." Zhou Qiqi frowned and looked at Lu Zhou, "You're a big man under 30, how dare you become a security guard? You really don't want any face. Does it have anything to do with you?" Lu Zhou looked at her. Zhou Qiqi hugged her hands and snorted coldly, "You're such a tough duck. Without me, you're even less promising than before. Don't worry, take care of yourself." He looked at Zhao Wenhao beside him, whose eyes flashed with a hint of threat. "That's very obvious. If you dare to say it, I'll make you look good." Zhou Qiqi couldn't help but laugh when she heard these words and said, "How do you mean to talk to me? Do you know where this is? This is the most upscale Western restaurant in the entire Yinshi city, and a poor person like you has no right to come here." "Really? I thought this was just an ordinary restaurant." Lu Zhou looked at her calmly. "You're such an ignorant useless person." Zhou Qiqi glanced at him, too lazy to talk to him again. Zhao Wenhao looked at Lu Zhou with a sneer on his face and said, "Although I don't know how you became the security guard of our half-mountain villa, I only need a phone call now to make you leave immediately. Do you believe it? Is that right?" Zhao Wenhao looked at him and smiled, "Considering that you are at least Qiqi's ex-husband, I can give you a chance." Zhou Qiqi gritted her teeth in anger and said, "Brother Hao, what chance do you give him for being such a useless person? It's better for him to roll up his sleeves and get lost now." Zhao Wenhao ignored her and looked at Lu Zhou with a playful expression on his face. "If you're willing to kneel down and lick the soles of my shoes clean now, and then call me Grandpa 3 times, maybe I can still consider letting you stay there. How about that?" Lu Zhou watched as he remained silent. Zhao Wenhao sat down directly in front of him. He put his feet together and placed them in front of Lu Zhou. He hugged his hands and looked at Lu Zhou with a proud expression. Zhou Qiqi looked at him and said, "Lu Zhou, if I were you, I would obediently follow what Brother Hao said. After all, like you, a useless person, unless any company is blind, they will take you." Upon hearing these words, Lu Zhou not only didn't get angry, but also smiled and said, "You're right. There is indeed a company that has invited me to be in charge." Zhou Qiqi gave him a white glance and said, "You don't see yourself as anything. If you could be the person in charge of garbage like this, even a sow would climb a tree. You can't say that. What if someone really becomes a company manager?" Zhao Wenhao deliberately mocked and joked. He looked at Lu Zhou with a sneer on his face and said, "Maybe in the future, our Zhao family will still have a request from Mr. Lu. When the time comes, please ask Mr. Lu to give us a bite to eat." Zhou Qiqi pouted and said, "Come on, just like him, any beggar on the street is better than him. It's better to expect a dog than to expect him." Zhao Wenhao sneered, "Qiqi, how could you speak like that? Don't insult the dog casually." Lu Zhou looked at Zhou Qiqi and said, "I hope you remember what you said today." Zhou Qiqi sneered and mocked, "What? Do you still want to tell me what kind of top-tier wealthy second generation you are? It will make me regret it later on. Wake up. You are such a dreamer." She looked at Lu Zhou and said, "I advise you to be more practical and take the initiative to kowtow to Hao Gu to admit your mistake. Maybe when he's in a good mood, he can let you continue working there. Otherwise, you'll just wait and get lost." "Okay, I'll wait." Lu Zhou hugged his hands and looked at them calmly. Zhou Qiqi, seeing that he dared to be so arrogant, angrily looked at Zhao Wenhao and said, "Brother Hao, make a phone call now. Let him go immediately." Zhao Wenhao took out his phone and dialed the phone. He looked at Lu Zhou sarcastically and said, "Kid, you're done." Chapter 10. Mom, I feel so painful. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Lu Zhou watched him quietly like this. Soon, the phone was connected. "Lao Lu, is there a new security guard coming to your place?" Zhao Wenhao looked at Lu Zhou across from him and asked. Old Lu on the phone was a bit surprised and said, "Indeed, a new one has arrived." "How did you know, Mr. Zhao?" "How do I know? He's sitting right in front of me now." Old Lu is confused. Zhao Wenhao's voice was icy cold. "An hour ago, I saw him on duty at the villa. I didn't expect to run out to skip shifts and fish in such a short while. Is that how your security department regulates people?" This. Old Lu listened with some confusion. They did have a new person in their security department, but he only saw him a few minutes ago. "Is that guy running so fast? What are you doing? Do you dare to use someone who cheats and plays tricks like this? If his negligence leads to property damage for us homeowners, can you bear this responsibility?" Although Old Lu still felt a bit confused in his heart, he knew it was not time to defend himself. He quickly apologized and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Zhao. You taught me the right lesson. It's all my fault for not managing well. Please rest assured that I will discipline him strictly when he comes back. No need, this kind of person is not qualified to stay in the villa area as a security guard anymore. You can dismiss him now." Old Lu didn't expect Zhao Wenhao to be so eager to dismiss that newcomer. It seems that the newcomer offended him somehow. He let out a sigh of helplessness in his heart. There was nothing he could do, who made them just a humble security guard. "After all, my arms can't twist my thighs. Could you please give him your phone?" Zhao Wenhao opened the hands-free and placed his phone on the table. He looked at Lu Zhou with a proud expression and said, "The hands-free has been turned on. You can announce it now." Old Lu's voice on the other side of the phone was icy cold as he said, "You're a new employee who dares to skip work and fish. Do you really know what rules are? You're fired. You won't be working tomorrow." Zhao Wenhao smiled at the corners of his mouth, looking like a small person achieving success. Zhou Qiqi also looked at Lu Zhou with a mocking expression on her face. "Who are you?" Lu Zhou looked at his phone and asked. "Are you pretending not to know me now, kid?" I'm your captain. Old Lu was angry. Zhao Wenhao's face became even more proud when he saw him angry. I don't know any captain. Lu Zhou looked at Zhao Wenhao with a playful smile on his face. Old Lu on the phone was stunned and said, aren't you Zhang Xiong? Just as he finished speaking, another voice suddenly came from the phone. Captain, are you calling me? Zhang Xiong, why are you here? You're not. Old Lu was confused. Zhao Wenhao stared blankly at Lu Zhou. Mr. Zhao, did you make a mistake? Zhang Xiong is right next to me now. Old Lu's voice came from the phone again. Zhao Wenhao hung up the phone with a dark face. After working for a while, he's not even the new security guard in the villa area. Zhou Qiqi was also so angry that she had nowhere to go. Kid, you dare to tease me. Zhao Wenhao's face was extremely ugly. When did I tease you? It's just that you're too stupid yourself. Zhao Wenhao gritted his teeth in anger. Zhou Qiqi glared angrily at the landing boat and said, aren't you a security guard who wouldn't have said it earlier? It's causing us Hauga to lose such a big face. He's losing face, what's with me? Lu Zhou looked at her and asked. Zhou Qiqi was angry and said, you're just a despicable person. You don't have the ability to use such vulgar and shameless means to harm our brother Hao. Alright, stop talking. Zhao Wenhao had already felt embarrassed enough, but he didn't expect the woman to repeat it loudly several times. Hauga, I. Zhou Qiqi looked at him with grievances. Zhao Wenhao's face turned black and he said, do you still think I'm not embarrassing enough? Do you want the whole world to know? No, I didn't mean that. Zhao Wenhao got up in anger and left. Zhou Qiqi glared angrily at Lu Zhou and said, it's all your fault. She quickly turned to chase Zhao Wenhao and said, Brother Hao, wait for me. When they walked to the gate, Yan Ryu happened to come back from a phone call. She was puzzled when she saw Zhao Wenhao's angry departure from behind. However, she didn't ask much. If Lu Zhou wanted to say something, he would definitely take the initiative to tell himself. About an hour later, the two finished eating and left the Western restaurant. Arriving downstairs, Yan Ryu and Lu Zhou parted ways. Lu Zhou is driving back to his previous home to get some things. On the other hand, the Zhao family welcomed a group of uninvited guests. Master Zhao, you really have such great authority. Qin Tianjia looked coldly at Zhao Yunsen across from him. The latter frowned at the young man, although he had already thought that the Qin family would definitely send someone to trouble him. But he didn't expect that the person sent would actually be the second young master of the Qin family, who usually doesn't manage the business of the family company. Qin Xiao, where did you start? Zhao Yunsen asked coldly as he sat in a chair. Qin Tianjia played with the ring on his hand and sneered, before, it was your Zhao family who begged to cooperate with our Qin family. I didn't expect your Zhao family to just climb the Yi family line and kick us away. Do you think this is appropriate? Zhao Yunsen's face turned cold and said, doing business is all about exchanging benefits. When my Zhao family cooperated with your Qin family before, you also made a lot of money. Now, I just want to change partners. Why not? Okay. That's great. Qin Tianjia clapped his hands and exclaimed. But what about the losses that your Zhao family suddenly defaulted on and brought to my Qin family? Qin Tianjia looked at him coldly. Zhao Yunsen snorted coldly and said, there is no such thing as a huge profit in the business world, and it is reasonable for losses to occur from time to time. Haven't your adults taught you? Qin Tianjia sneered and said, it seems that the Yi family has really given the Zhao family leader a lot of confidence. His words have become much more forceful. Do you have anything else to do? Zhao Yunsen asked coldly. Qin Tianjia smiled and turned his head to leave. Just as he walked to the door, he suddenly stopped again. He turned his head and said coldly, Master Zhao, let me remind you that offending our Qin family will not bring any good consequences. Farewell. Zhao Yunsen shouted coldly and angrily. The butler approached and escorted Qin Tianjie out. About 20 minutes later, Qin Tianjie drove to a traffic light intersection. The red light was already on ahead, but he still ignored it and ran straight over. Bang! He suddenly bumped into a young mother and daughter on the zebra crossing. The woman looks only around 27 or 8 years old, while her daughter looks only about 4 years old. The two fell to the ground on the spot. The woman was not seriously injured and sat up in a daze. Like rain. She quickly looked around. Shwa. Her face instantly changed. Her daughter is now lying in a pool of blood. She ignored the pain on her body and quickly got up and ran over with a limp. She quickly hugged her daughter and said, "What's wrong with Xiaoyu? Xiaoyu, don't sleep. Mom is here. Wake up quickly." The passers-by around felt a bit pitiful when they saw them like this. Su Xiaoro looked at the passers-by around in tears and said, "Please help me. Help my daughter." Passers-by dared not step forward when they saw that pool of blood. "My phone broke, could you please help me call an ambulance? I beg you." She kept pleading. The passerby took out their phone and helped her call 120. Everyone looked at her daughter covered in blood in her arms and couldn't help but discuss. "They're all injured like this, I'm afraid even if an ambulance comes, it won't be useful, right? Yeah, the nearest hospital is 7 or 8 kilometers away from here. By the time they come over, they probably won't have anyone left. If anyone is willing to drive that child to the hospital now, there may still be some hope." Upon hearing these words, Su Xiaoro quickly sought help from the passing cars and said, "I beg you to take my daughter to the hospital, okay? I beg you." She kept kowtowing to passing drivers, but no one was willing to help them. Some drivers simply roll up the car window as if they haven't seen it. At this moment, Su Xiaoro completely fell into despair. "Mom!" Her daughter in her arms suddenly spoke up. Su Xiaoro quickly looked at her and said, "How are you, Xiaoyu?" Su Xiaoyu's mouth twitched and said, I feel so painful." Su Xiaoro watched as her daughter continued to bleed, as if her heart was also dripping with blood. She turned her head and shouted around, "I beg you. Which kind-hearted person should take my daughter to the hospital? I kowtow to you." The passers-by didn't know what to do when they saw them like this for a moment. Pop! Suddenly, a stack of cash was thrown in front of Su Xiaoro. She looked up and saw that Qin Tianjie had already turned around and was ready to board the car and leave. She quickly called out, "Don't leave, take my daughter to the hospital first. I beg you." Qin Tianjie turned his head to look at Su Xiaoyu and sneered, "Anyway, we're all going to die. What difference does it make to die somewhere?" After speaking, he turned around and wanted to get on the car. At the moment he walked up to the car door, he suddenly felt something hugging his feet. He turned his head and saw Su Xiaoro, covered in blood, hugging his leg. "I beg you. You can take my daughter to the hospital first. I won't sue you for hitting someone. Can you save my daughter first?" Zhao Tianjie frowned and said, "Do you still want to sue me?" Su Xiaoro quickly shook her head and said, "I won't sue, I will definitely not sue. I beg you to take my daughter to the hospital first, otherwise she will really die. Get lost." Qin Tianjie suddenly kicked her to the ground. He looked at his trousers with a disgusted expression, stained with a lot of blood. "What a bad luck. You even dirted the pants I just bought." He frowned and looked at Su Xiaoro, "Do you know how much my pants cost? I can't even afford to sell you." Su Xiaoro held onto her chest and kept coughing. Qin Tianjie's kick just now made her feel very uncomfortable in the chest, and she almost couldn't catch her breath. "Anything without long eyes, you all deserve to be hit and killed." Qin Tianjie gave them a disgusted look and opened the car door, ready to get in and leave. Suddenly, the car door was grabbed by someone.